Let me begin with a simple question. Have you ever noticed that the world gets very uncomfortable when a woman is comfortable being alone? Have you ever noticed how silence scares people more than noise, especially when that silence belongs to a woman living alone? Society often assumes that if a woman has no boyfriend, no constant companion, then something must be missing in her life. But what if the opposite is true? What if she is not lacking anything, but instead has finally stopped losing herself? Living alone is not a rejection of love. It is a refusal to accept half-hearted connections. It is a quiet decision to understand oneself before trying to understand someone else. When a woman lives alone, she begins to hear her own inner voice clearly. There is no emotional dependency to cloud her judgment, no fear-driven compromises, no pressure to fit into someone else's expectations. In that space, she starts building a relationship with herself, and that relationship becomes her foundation. A woman who can sit alone with her thoughts learns emotional balance. She experiences sadness without panic and happiness without attachment. She understands that moods come and go, but self-respect must stay. This inner stability makes her strong, not rigid, but rooted. Rooted people do not fall easily when storms come. They bend, learn, and grow back stronger. Many believe relationships give security, but often they only give distraction. Living alone teaches responsibility, discipline, and clarity. She learns how to manage her time, her emotions, and her dreams. She no longer waits for someone to motivate her or validate her choices. Her confidence does not come from compliments, it comes from competence. From knowing that even if no one shows up, she will. Such a woman is not against love. She simply values peace more than drama. She understands that loneliness is better than losing oneself in the wrong company. This understanding makes her selective, not arrogant. She doesn't chase attention because she is already fulfilled. She doesn't fear rejection because she has already accepted herself. When a woman chooses to live alone, she also learns the power of boundaries. She knows when to say yes and, more importantly, when to say no. She does not confuse attachment with love or sacrifice with self-destruction. Her standards rise not because she thinks she is superior, but because she knows her worth. And here is the most beautiful part: when such a woman finally chooses a partner, she does not choose out of fear of being alone. She chooses out of joy. She shares her life, not to fill a void, but to multiply happiness. She walks into relationships as a whole person, not as someone seeking completion. The world may misunderstand her strength. Some will call her cold, some will call her too independent. But deep inside, she knows the truth. Independence did not make her distant, it made her clear. Solitude did not weaken her, it refined her. A woman who can live alone carries a quiet power. She can love deeply, walk away peacefully, and stand firmly in her truth. Because the strongest bond she has created is not with another person, but with herself. And once that bond is formed, life no longer feels incomplete, it feels aligned. Sometimes life teaches us lessons not through noise, but through stillness. When a woman chooses to live alone, without the constant presence of a boyfriend, the world quickly labels her. People assume she must be lonely, broken, or waiting for something to happen. But very few pause to understand that some people are not waiting at all, they are becoming. Living alone gives a woman something rare: is space to observe herself. Without the influence of emotional dependency, she begins to see her patterns clearly: what excites her, what drains her, what truly matters to her. This clarity does not come overnight. It arrives slowly through evenings of silence, mornings of discipline, and moments where she learns to comfort herself instead of escaping into someone else. A woman who learns to be alone also learns patience. She stops rushing into connections just to avoid emptiness. She understands that companionship should add peace, not replace it. In this phase, she builds emotional maturity. She no longer reacts immediately, she responds thoughtfully. Her decisions come from awareness, not from fear of abandonment. Many believe love gives strength, but often strength is required to love well. Living alone teaches that strength. She handles her responsibilities, faces her struggles, and celebrates her small victories quietly. This self-reliance slowly turns into self-trust, and when a woman trusts herself, she becomes calm. Calm people are powerful because they are not easily shaken by opinions or expectations. Such a woman does not depend on attention to feel valuable. She has discovered that validation from within is more stable than validation from outside. Compliments become pleasant, not necessary. Criticism becomes information, not identity. This emotional independence protects her from unhealthy attachments and one-sided relationships. Choosing to live alone also sharpens discernment. She starts noticing energy instead of words, actions instead of promises. She understands that being with the wrong person is far more exhausting than being by herself. So she chooses wisely, not because she is afraid to love, but because she respects her inner peace. People may misunderstand her silence. They may think she is distant or difficult, but what they do not see is the inner work happening quietly. She is learning to say no without guilt and yes without fear. She is learning that sacrifice without self-respect is not virtue, and compromise without values is not love. When such a woman eventually allows someone into her life, she does not cling. She stands beside. She does not expect the other person to fix her life. She invites them to walk with her in it. Her love is lighter, freer, and more conscious because it is not born from emptiness. Living alone does not make a woman less loving. It makes her more intentional. She loves without losing herself. She gives without draining herself. And if she ever has to walk away, she does so with dignity, not bitterness. In a world that constantly pushes women to be chosen, a woman who chooses herself creates a quiet revolution. She proves that completeness is not found in a relationship status, but in self-awareness. And once that awareness is achieved, life flows with less confusion and more grace. There is a quiet strength that develops when a woman learns to walk alone. Not the kind of strength that announces itself loudly, but the kind that settles deep within. Society often celebrates togetherness and constantly reminds women that happiness must arrive through a relationship. Yet, there is a different kind of happiness that grows when a woman stops running from solitude and starts understanding it. Living alone gently teaches self-awareness. Without the emotional noise of constant companionship, a woman begins to recognize her own emotional patterns. She understands when she is tired, when she is overwhelmed, and when she truly needs rest instead of reassurance. This awareness becomes her guide. Instead of seeking comfort externally, she learns to provide it to herself, and that changes her entire emotional landscape. When a woman lives alone, she also learns responsibility at a deeper level. She becomes accountable not just for her daily tasks, but for her emotional reactions, her choices, and her direction in life. There is no one else to blame, and there is no one else to rely on. This can feel uncomfortable at first, but discomfort often precedes growth. Over time, this responsibility transforms into confidence, the quiet confidence that comes from knowing she can handle life as it comes. Such independence does not harden the heart, it softens it with wisdom. A woman who has faced herself honestly becomes more compassionate, both toward herself and others. She understands that everyone is fighting an unseen battle. Because she no longer expects others to complete her, she stops demanding and starts appreciating. Her relationships, when they do exist, become healthier and more balanced. Many fear being alone because it exposes unresolved emotions. But a woman who stays with herself through those emotions develops emotional resilience. She learns that sadness does not destroy her and that joy does not need to be chased. Emotions become experiences, not identities. This stability gives her the ability to respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively. Living alone also teaches the art of boundaries. She realizes that love without respect is exhausting and attention without sincerity is empty. With this understanding, she becomes selective about who enters her life, not out of arrogance but out of clarity. She knows that peace is not something to be negotiated away. The world may misinterpret her independence as detachment. Some may think she is too focused on herself or too difficult to please. But what they often miss is that she has simply outgrown emotional dependency. She values depth over drama and consistency over intensity. She no longer seeks to be chosen. She chooses what aligns with her values. When such a woman eventually invites someone into her life, she does so from a place of wholeness. She does not cling or control. She shares. Her love is not heavy with expectations because her happiness does not depend on another person's behavior. This makes her presence peaceful and her absence respected. Living alone is not about rejecting relationships, it is about redefining them. It is about understanding that love should complement life, not consume it. A woman who has learned to be alone carries a steady calm within her. She knows she can walk beside someone, walk behind someone, or walk away without losing herself. And that inner assurance becomes her greatest strength. There comes a phase in life when a woman realizes that constantly adjusting, explaining, and proving herself is exhausting. In that moment, solitude stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like relief. Living alone then becomes not a sign of absence, but a sign of awareness. Awareness that peace is precious and should not be traded casually. When a woman lives alone, she begins to understand the difference between love and attachment. Attachment often demands, controls, and fears loss. Love, on the other hand, allows, supports, and trusts. In her own space, away from emotional dependence, she sees clearly how often people confuse intensity with intimacy. This clarity protects her heart. Being alone also teaches her to slow down. Without the pressure to constantly please someone else, she listens to her own rhythm. She eats when she is hungry, rests when she is tired, and reflects when she is confused. These small acts of self-respect quietly rebuild her relationship with herself. Over time, she becomes more patient, not just with life, but with her own imperfections. A woman who lives alone learns to sit with unanswered questions. She no longer rushes for immediate emotional solutions. Instead of filling silence with conversations that mean nothing, she allows silence to teach her something. In that silence, she discovers her values. She understands what she will accept and what she will no longer tolerate. This phase also strengthens her emotional spine. When difficulties arise, she does not immediately look for someone to rescue her. She first asks herself what she can do. This self-trust becomes her anchor. Even when she seeks support, she does so from strength, not helplessness. She stands on her feet, not on someone's shoulders. Many assume that living alone makes a woman emotionally distant. In reality, it makes her emotionally honest. She no longer pretends to be fine when she is not, and she no longer forces herself to stay where she feels unseen. Her honesty begins with herself, and that honesty naturally reflects in her interactions with others. With time, she also learns that not every connection deserves access to her inner world. She guards her energy gently but firmly. She understands that availability without boundaries leads to emotional burnout. This does not make her selfish, it makes her conscious. She gives where there is respect, and she withdraws where there is confusion. When love eventually enters her life, it does not feel like rescue. It feels like companionship. She walks beside her partner, not behind them and not ahead of them. There is no urgency to prove her worth, because she has already done that work within herself. Her presence becomes calming, not demanding. Living alone refines a woman. It strips away emotional noise and leaves behind clarity. She becomes less reactive and more reflective, less needy and more nurturing. Not because she has hardened, but because she has healed. A woman who has learned to live alone carries a quiet dignity. She knows that she can create a meaningful life with or without external validation. And that understanding gives her freedom, the freedom to love deeply, choose wisely, and walk away peacefully when needed. There is a subtle transformation that happens when a woman stops searching for herself in someone else and starts meeting herself in silence. At first, living alone may feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. But slowly that discomfort turns into understanding, and understanding turns into strength. What once felt like emptiness begins to feel like space, space to breathe, to think, and to grow. When a woman lives alone, she is no longer distracted by the constant need to be emotionally available. She begins to notice her inner world more clearly. She understands her fears instead of running from them and acknowledges her desires without guilt. This awareness becomes a form of self-respect. She realizes that her emotions are not weaknesses to be fixed by someone else, but signals to be understood by herself. Living alone also teaches her the value of emotional honesty. Without the pressure to maintain appearances, she stops pretending. She accepts her flaws without self-judgment and celebrates her strengths without arrogance. This balance gives her a grounded confidence. She no longer needs to prove her worth because she knows it quietly and deeply. In this solitude, she learns that happiness is not a permanent state, but a practice. Some days are heavy, some days are light, and both are acceptable. She becomes gentle with herself on difficult days and grateful on peaceful ones. This emotional maturity allows her to move through life with grace instead of resistance. A woman who has lived alone understands the cost of unhealthy attachments. She knows how draining it is to constantly adjust, explain, or wait for reassurance. This understanding sharpens her choices. She becomes selective not because she fears connection, but because she values alignment. She would rather walk alone than walk in the wrong direction with someone else. People may misunderstand her independence. They may see her calmness as distance or her silence as pride. But inside, she is simply centered. She is not avoiding love. She is protecting her peace. She knows that real companionship should feel safe, supportive, and respectful, not confusing or heavy. When such a woman allows love into her life, it feels different. There is no desperation, no urgency to merge identities. She does not lose herself in another person because she has already found herself. Her love becomes generous, not needy. She shares her time, her energy, and her care freely, but not at the cost of her well-being. Living alone also teaches her acceptance. She accepts that some people will stay and some will leave, and both experiences can teach valuable lessons. This acceptance frees her from fear. She no longer holds on tightly or pushes people away. She allows life to unfold naturally. A woman who can live alone walks with quiet confidence. She knows that her life has meaning regardless of her relationship status. She knows that love is beautiful, but self-respect is essential. This understanding becomes her strength. And when she looks at her journey, she realizes that living alone did not isolate her, it prepared her. It taught her how to stand firmly in her truth, love consciously, and move through life with clarity and calm. A woman who can live alone can walk with anyone or walk away from anyone. Because the strongest relationship she has built is the one with herself. Thank you.